General Hospital. Family members and villagers have called for urgent action to replace the decades-old bridge, saying it's unfit for the volume of traffic. Ironically, a newer, unused four-lane bridge nearby has remained closed for years due to unfinished access roads. Oropouche West MP Dr. Lakrambodo visited the site and said efforts are underway to make the bridge operational. The Ministry of Works acknowledged the tragedy and said completing the infrastructure remains a priority. Hardcore mourned Danclair, calling her a beloved and motivational member of their team. Internationally, tsunami waves hit Hawaii after a massive earthquake near Russia triggered warnings across the Pacific. Waves up to 5.7 feet were recorded on Maui and Hilo, prompting evacuations and shelter openings. While the tsunami warning was later downgraded to an advisory, officials urged residents to stay away from the coast due to ongoing risks. The earthquake is among the strongest recorded since 1900. Waves also reached California, Alaska, and parts of Canada, though no major damage has been reported. In Maui, memories of the deadly wildfires 2 years ago left residents especially cautious. Well, that's news to the hour on WESN. I'm Naomi McNish. Thanks for watching.
WESN.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
Pastor J, I want to get a tattoo.
You really want
to me. Respond to me how you would respond to me.
The first question I'll ask is why?
Controversial taboo topics.
We get so consumed by church, we forget that we have to live the life of being a Christian outside of the Sunday.
Like you say,
services.
we think going to a service makes us a Christian.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. So here we are about to hear the second time Pastor J wanted to take a tattoo.
Would have been late last year and early this year.
Oh gosh.
Hope Unfiltered podcast with Pastor J and Ren.
We are tackling the hard-hitting topics, some controversial topics, some topics we sweep under the rug. You don't always have to forgive in a relationship for it to move forward.
If it is you are in a situation where you forgive the person, but to the detriment of yourself, what are you really doing?
It is very uncommon for somebody in the younger age group to have dementia.
Atheists don't not believe.
Is that I can't disprove God, but you also can't prove God, so we kind of have to stalemate.
We'll focus on the woman who's being the victim,
right,
or the man who's being the victim. We exclude the children.
Folks are trying to study the underlying brain mechanism to figure out how does this particular disorder happen in the brain? How is the brain processing this?
Don't worry about AI, worry about humans working with AI.
Are you willing to learn new skills to stay relevant for the future job market? That's the challenge that people are going to struggle with.
This is 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. The distance from where we should be in the world in going forward on our commitments with climate change.
The effects of climate change that cannot be accounted for. It's called loss and damage. And we're seeing loss and damage happening so much more in this decade and the previous decade.
The principal term there was this question of the correspondent banking issues.
That is why we're trying to build capacity with this country here, Trinidad and Tobago, and other countries in the region. Man is not showing any signs of stopping or even slowing down. More than half of the forest in Trinidad is already gone.
All the plants and all the animals and all of the nice clean water and fresh air and everything had to be on this planet for humanity to have a chance.
We have small change when it comes to countries that can take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. I mean, and Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada, in spite of the obvious difference in size.
This is Face of Sports, WESN Content Capital. How you felt about the kiss on the lip?
That's the business. I'm nothing to do with that.
I find that was distasteful.
The national senior team, whether you like it or not, that is the model for all other teams to follow.
I'm assuming that the regional requirement may be a much stricter requirement.
This is not about Pro League and Super League. This is a league run by the Normalization Committee that I'm responsible for.
Nobody expected FIFA to fund this arrangement.
If we don't get a professional attitude towards this, we are doomed for failure.
You break a balance, trip the leg, control the body.
They ain't gonna stand put forever.
Why you want the Chiefs to lose so? Why you want the Chiefs to lose so?
They already have two. Lamar don't
Why?
have.
You're jealous because you know the Chiefs getting closer to the Patriots. Let's go to the last part.
No,
of the game.
no.
Let's go to the last part.
WESN.
Hello there. This might be unexpected for some. Apologies for the late start. It was my fault this time. But with that said, Sean Michael Smollett, this is Talking Point from our studios in Trinidad, because while it is nice to have the ability to do the show from Tobago, there's two things about that I dislike. One, I dislike flying. This is not even about disliking Tobago. I dislike flying. If I could drive to Tobago, I would be there far more often. The other thing is, it's just not the same, you know, doing it via Zoom, as opposed to being in the studio here, being able to speak with our guests and commentators in person. But with that said, a couple of things to get through before we welcome today's guest. Tomorrow's a holiday. We will be having Ashraf Ali with us today. As I said yesterday, seems to be a lot of national security stuff. It's almost like how it was with COVID during COVID. And while I guess you could say it's not necessarily something I want to do in a way, being so focused on one overarching subject, but that's what's hitting the news right now. And to some extent, this could be, in a way, compensating for the fact that during the political campaigning period, crime wasn't focused on as much as it is now, in my opinion. During the election cycles, crime was a topic. Crime was acknowledged as a major topic, but we didn't really get a lot out of it. It was just more like, well, crime is a problem. And then moving on, because a lot, really, of what was discussed was, yes, crime in a very general sense, and then economic things. Because what was one of the big questions for the UNC looking to come into government? Where are you going to find the money? And that question is still there. And as I said yesterday, now you have to balance the needs of national security to the needs of other things. Because in part, if you allow your economy to suffer down the line, you won't see the growth needed to keep up with inflation, and then your national security will eventually suffer too. Now, before we get into all of that, let's go into those specific topics. But first, as I said, before we get into all of that, there is a situation making the rounds, a video. I didn't see the video myself. A man being beaten and chopped at least once with a cutlass on his forehead above, I believe it was his left eye, leaving him seriously bloodied. There is an edited photo, at least in one daily newspaper. The Commissioner of Police says he's deeply concerned. In fact, both the Commissioner of Police and Deputy Commissioner Junior Benjamin expressed shock and horror, that's my words, at the whole situation. Junior Benjamin is quoted as saying, it's very disturbing. It seems like this was a vigilantism situation where a group of people basically assaulted a man. I'm not entirely sure if he, A, did anything to arouse their suspicion, B, did anything that they could confirm was illegal against someone in the community. The point is he was attacked, right? He was told door teeth with an expletive in between the door teeth. And the thing is, because I believe Junior Benjamin said this is totally unacceptable. We will not tolerate that at all in TNT, right? And then opposition MP and Chief Whip Marvin Gonzalez said, I don't know the details of this matter, but this is chilling and disconcerting. This is exactly the floodgates that will be opened with the current Stand Your Ground legislation in TNT, and given recent comments by key government spokespersons like the Minister of Defense. We'll speak more about that later on in the show. To some extent, this is correct, although arguably, and again, there are things that Mr. Gonzalez says that I don't always agree with, right? There are things that he has said in his capacity as an opposition MP that I do agree with. Usually what I disagree with is how he said it. Ironically, in this case, I would argue his commentary on the matter, in a way, is actually weaker than it could have been, because he's saying this is what will happen with Stand Your Ground. I say, nay, if this is the result of the Stand Your Ground legislation and the accompanying increase in FULs being given out, if injuries but no loss of life is the result, we'll be lucky. But given the way how things are going, and MP Gonzalez did speak to the Minister of Defense's comments, given those comments, it won't be people getting attacked and assaulted and injured and chopped. It will be people getting shot with the intention of shooting to kill. But this is just one example. But again, there were other examples before of shootings without the new, more aggressive Stand Your Ground legislations, where we saw situations where shooting first and asking questions later literally was the wrong thing to do. I don't necessarily want to get into it right now. We'll get into it later on when Ashraf comes on. Right, so just still on national security, apparently defense lawyers representing some of the prisoners at the barracks, apparently 2 of them there have been threats issued against their life. So there isn't much to say about it. I just find that to be quite curious as to what's going on. We don't necessarily know who has issued the threats and what exactly the threats entail. Is it threats against their families, threats against their life, threats of harm, threats of murder? Don't know, right? So I just thought that is something to keep in mind, that even the defense attorneys are being threatened, but again, the question is by whom? I don't think it's law enforcement agencies threatening them, because the law enforcement agencies won't then turn around and say, hey, someone threatening your life. Us. No, that's a little bit, I'm sure there will be conspiracy theorists that will want to speculate about that. It could be rival criminal enterprises, or it could be disgruntled gang leaders. Whether they are the people incarcerated or not, I don't know if they're gang leaders, but we don't know for sure. It hasn't been proven. It could be shot callers on the outside saying, hey, we don't like the job you're doing, for whatever reason. I don't know. But I just find it curious, because that is potentially going to be biting the hand that defends you, if not outright, in some instances, potentially feeds you. Because it's suspected lawyers are part of the security breaches. Hasn't been proven, we don't know for sure. Now, national security concerns might require more expenditure in the budget. But remember I said that the interests of unions and the interests of the state, whether it is the government and their own political agenda, or, that is to say, the political party that makes up the majority government, or the state as in the public sector, private sector, just the country in general, what is good for the country. Those interests are not always going to be aligned. Now, the interests of the UNC and some unions were aligned during the election, because the UNC wanted to beat the PNM, and the unions wanted a new government to negotiate with anyone but the PNM. So they turned to the UNC. Cool. Now, we're only a few months out. I don't know if to some extent this is due to impatience and entitlement, because it's not as though we have reached like 2 years in. Where's the wage negotiations? We're still like at the tail end of month 3. Okay, it's more or less, this is the end. We're at the tail end of month 3. But to what extent did you expect a new government to start, changing things wholesale and doing a whole set of wage negotiations and all that? Let's not forget, they're operating under a previous administration's budget. So they have to figure that out, right? So of course now, one union that spoke out first, I think this was kind of like the first instance where you're seeing, hey, here's some actual pushback, not just diplomatic language to imply, but actual direct language of the situation. We're looking at it and we don't like what it is. This is from Tutor. Now, to be fair to Tutor, they took a neutral stance. They weren't part of the election machine. They weren't one of the unions that stood on the platform and said, we are going to get 10% starting for negotiations moving forward. No. Tutor was wise. In fact, to some extent, what some union leaders did, that is to say active union leaders, not the ones that left the union and became candidates, that might not be in line with their own union's constitutional laws, but that's a whole other kettle of fish. Tutor President Martin Lumpkin basically is looking forward to getting a fair and just settlement, right? This is after the Prime Minister said, we may not have all the money now, but I have faith with God's help, we'll find a way to pay the 10% to our hardworking public servants. And Chuza maintains that the Memorandum of Agreement signed in April 2025 was and still is in the best interest of our members. Careful consideration was given to prevailing local and international economic situations. Chuza is still mindful of these situations which our nation continues to face. We look forward to the entire public sector getting a fair, just settlement. This isn't just about one group. Government must treat all bargaining units equitably and avoid piecemeal politics. The MOU was signed in good faith. So, former General Secretary of PSA, Oral Sanders, says the Prime Minister's comments are concerning and risk appearing politically symbolic rather than fiscally strategic. As in, are you all concerned that you all were getting lip service paid? When Prime Minister says she's trusting in God to deliver salaries, I feel nervous. Faith is important, but budgets aren't based on belief. They are based on maths. Right? A former PSA executive member, Nixon Callender, was also critical, stressing that no formal offer has been tabled to match the public claims. Let's not mislead people. The government never offered 10%. That was PSA's proposal. But these are former members of the PSA being more direct. Mr. Lumpkin wasn't quite direct. He was still trying to not necessarily be too aggressive. But then, General Secretary of the National Trade Union Center says workers have been paying the price for mismanagement and corruption. Right, okay, that's in the past. But he is basically calling for talks in order, he's calling for the negotiations to start, right? And saying things. Now, when he says because of mismanagement, we reach where we reach, that's pointing to the past. When he says you cannot continue to make the working class suffer, this can't be a top-down approach. To some extent, the grammar in that sentence is pointing to the present, not to the PNM. Now, maybe it was a misspeak, but it's pointing to the UNC. If ignored, the unions will act. So already, this is where the interests are seemingly starting to diverge. And ironically, it's not even specifically about whether the 10% is go or no go, whether if it can be done or if it won't be done. It's about the time frame about it. It seems as though they are not willing to wait any longer. Ms. Anderson was basically saying, you cannot tell me I'm working in 2025 and being paid a 2014 salary. Well, here's the thing though, and I don't know for sure, but I am curious to find out what is the private sector having to experience. Because if the private sector, if the majority of the private sector is saying, well, we are working on a 2014 salary, then in my opinion, the needs of the union are secondary to the needs of improving the economy as a whole in order to try to benefit everybody. Because technically speaking, if that's the case, you are in a situation where you're suffering just like the rest of us. Now, the parliamentarians aren't, but notice no one is asking. And again, the Salary Review Commission recommendations which were accepted, right? That was very unpopular. And yet there is no pressure on the UNC. Well, listen, you can't get the 10%, but you're still keeping them salary increases. Oh, well, we can't just not accept the money because blah, 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 blah. Hey, didn't it happen? Didn't the last cabinet do it? You have a greater majority. Can't you undo it? You write laws. Does it take a 3/5 majority for this thing? At least explain yourself, because you were quick to jump on the whole, we will give the 10%, and yes, the previous administration was wrong for taking salary increases. They were wrong for taking the salary increases. Where's my money? They were wrong. Where's my money? So I want to see how long the unions could hold straight now, because that's essentially what they're being asked to do. Oh, wait, didn't the PNM ask the unions to hold straight? I wonder, now, here'll be the kicker. If a government minister asks anybody to take 5% or less, At that point, you will forgive me, but in that moment, I will lose all decorum and I will bawl out laughing. Because essentially, you didn't really know what you were doing when you traded one 5% offer for another. Because country has needs. And I have already gone on the record. First of all, and let's not forget, the unions don't want the public sector to be cleaned up. They don't want the redundant workers and the unproductive workers to be let go, to be removed, to be off the books. They're not willing to say, well, look, we know that there are people who are not pulling their weight. Get rid of them and divert some of that money to give the ones who are working wage increases, because that's not their job. Their job is to keep, Watson Duke said it best, no retrenchments, and we're not going to take any pay cuts. We want wage increases. He said that for WASA way back when. And again, no one could state a case that WASA is in a healthy position fiscally with regards to its employment levels. So maybe there is that argument there. It hasn't been presented. I haven't seen it. So we're in a situation where the unions want their cake and they want to eat it too. They had a similar stance on petrol. That was one of the reasons why I didn't mind petrol being restructured. It's just that in hindsight, and hindsight is always 20/20, so that's to some extent a failure on my part, shutting down the refinery permanently was a stupid move. But the point is, that's the position of unions. They don't care about wasted money that's bloating the labor bill for the public sector. They want wage increases to bloat that further. And that's something that maybe we could have afforded 10 years, 15 years, 20 years ago, 25 years ago. We can't afford that now, but they don't care. That's why I said the interests of the nation and the interests of unions are not always aligned, because we live in a country where people accept less money to work in the private sector, and that's a hell of a way to live, when to get away from the bubble and the dotishness that happens in the public sector sometimes. You're saying, I will work for a corporate overlord or something along those ilks. I don't want tenureship, and I don't want the easy, well, once I'm a teacher in the public sector, they can't get rid of me. I will go to the private sector to get less money. And in doing so, I will prefer my job there. I don't want to deal with the hassle of that. We've never heard of things like that, at least I haven't, to accept less. But anyway, last thing I want to say, with regards to needs of the country, there was a situation where a Siparia woman, she fell off of a bridge, basically. I think she hit something when she was trying to drive over a very narrow bridge that didn't have guardrails in Debe, and her silver Toyota Axio fell off the bridge. Some Venezuelan nationals tried to jump in and save her. Some locals tried to pull out the car, but it was too late. She died. This is one of those things where survival, if everybody knows what they're doing, including the driver, was possibly likely, but that's one of those very unfortunate realities of when a car plunges into the water. Not everybody knows exactly what to do in that exact moment. I myself, I have an idea of what to do if I'm ever in a car that plunges in the water. It doesn't mean that I would know what exactly to do in whatever specific circumstances I find in, because it's one of those things where every second counts, right? And it's hard not to panic. It's not something that you would have been in before. And it goes back to, because in this situation, apparently, there was a replacement bridge built some distance away, not too far, but the roads to that bridge were never done. The whole project, generally speaking, was never completed, so it's just there. The bridge itself, I believe the structure of the bridge, at least the basic structure, is there, but it's not being put to use. And how many situations, because I have driven on bridges like this before, usually very nervously and very slowly. How many situations do we have where infrastructure needs are not just for our comfort, but for our safety? And to some extent, make no mistake, the previous administration, it wasn't that they didn't want to do it. It was how they were managing limited resources. And arguably, they weren't doing that very well. But the reason why there's a lot of needs that were not met was because we didn't have the money to just throw around. You could potentially say the unethical behavior was when they threw around money on willy-nilly stupidness. When they gave up CPEP contracts for however many years and URP contracts to ghost gangs, allegedly. And when they did not take a harder stance on the public sector to get rid of redundant employees because it's unpopular and they want to keep their voters, theoretically. So will the current administration not want to take short-term hits to their popularity, particularly when it's because you can't communicate the necessities of the moment, these things happen? Will they decide to just allow these situations to go on because they're too weak to show leadership in the face of great challenges, like the previous administration did? They showed some leadership, the PNM did, for COVID. I say some. I say some because I'm very well aware and I've gone on record on what I believe to be multiple deficiencies of that situation. But there was some leadership. And at times, it was appropriate, and at times it was not. Will the UNC now show some leadership, or real leadership, rather, for the economy? Because we didn't really see that under the PNM. What we saw was, dare I say, more cowardice than anything else, because they were not willing to do anything except hold strain and try to keep some facsimile of what we already have, basically playing it safe, basically not wanting to risk anything. But you're trying to have a $60 billion budget with a $50 billion annual revenue. It don't really work, right? So rather than being scared and not wanting to do anything dramatic and not wanting to do anything innovative and not wanting to do anything aggressive, will we see leadership? Because part of the reason why politicians don't do these things is the inability to communicate and to lead the people through times like this. Will this administration prove to be no better than their predecessors while selling us a dream of something more? That could only be proven over time. It hasn't been disproven yet for all of the detractors out there. Don't think this is a criticism. The prang now starts. So, to some extent, we still, whether we want to or not, we have to wait and see how things unfold. And I appreciate more money being given to national security. I am willing to say we should sacrifice other things for that and prioritize that, but how far will it go with regards to being brutally honest with ourselves and how we budget come the next fiscal year? That's why this next budget, it's not the mid-year budget review. That was just how do we live within the confines of the previous administration's decisions. No, the upcoming budget will be very telling. And I'm going to say this, as much as I'm going to laugh at the unions if they get another 5% offer, I'm going to be very upset if the budget presentation is essentially, I don't expect this to happen, I don't think this will happen, but if the budget presentation will essentially be something that was delivered within the last 3 years, something very similar, because they themselves don't know how to get out of the confines of, well, people will be upset if we cut this and if we cut that and we don't progress in any way. Well then, to me, that will be a sign of they really are different sides of the same coin. But so far, we've seen indicators that's not the case. It rarely comes down, though, to the budget. What you're willing to spend, that, at the end of the day, reveals your ideals and principles and ideologies and values more than what you say. You could say all of the nice, flowery language. Let's see what you're willing to spend on, what you're willing to sacrifice. That will show us really where you stand. Let's take a break. When we come back, A lot of national security topics to get through. Hopefully, we'll get through all of them with Ashraf Ali, disaster management expert and retired inspector of the TTPS. Stay tuned. This is Talking About the WSN show. Michael Small. We'll be right back after this.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
Our award-winning show is back, and this season promises to be even more exciting than before. What's Up, Doc isn't just a title, it's a call to action for anyone who wants to improve their health and well-being. Join us on this thrilling ride towards better health on WESN Content Capital.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378, or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
Struggling with heart health or frequent migraines? Discover the simple steps to reclaim your energy and vitality.
We're diving into a topic that affects about 422 million people around the world: diabetes.
Tune into Wellness Unlocked, the series that delivers expert advice, practical tips, and inspiring stories to help you take control of your health and well-being. Your health matters. Don't miss Wellness Unlocked. Watch now on WESN and take the first step toward better health.
If these walls could talk, they'd cry uncle. They didn't plan to become offices or yoga studios, but they've stood by us, even when we got a little stir-crazy. For that, they deserve some thanks. They deserve Benjamin Moore.
I am Dr. Delphina Ovid, your friendly neighborhood dentist. At Community Hospital Dental Clinic, we offer examinations which include x-rays, basic oral cancer screening, and a treatment plan. We also offer cleanings, fillings, extractions, root canal treatment, and complete and partial dentures. Remember, you don't have to brush and floss all your teeth, just the ones you want to keep.
Give us a call at 235-5479.
The Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
The home of Caribbean content is growing, and we welcome you to be a part of the #1 platform for young personalities who are driven to make a positive impact in society. As we continue to reach every corner of Trinidad and Tobago through our daily broadcasts, our social media pages, or through our 75+ digital billboards across the nation, contact us to learn about our competitive rates via marketing at wesncc.com or call us at 628-5835. WESN Content Capital, television with a difference.
I'm back here and talk about the WSND Content Capital Show. Michael Small, joined by disaster management expert Ashraf Ali, here to speak about, and Ashraf, I've been saying this multiple, well, this is the second time for the week I've realized there's, as you always say, never a dull moment, but I'm just kind of besides myself with the amount of national security topics in the press, whether it's the whole SOE situation, the stand your ground law, or linking the CPEP to gangs and ghost gangs in Europe and all of that. There's so much national security topics. It's almost like reporting on COVID during COVID. That's the overarching narrative, right? And I hope that the population isn't fed up of it, but that's more or less the big stories right now. I guess economically speaking, we're waiting for the budget, but we have this crime situation ongoing. So welcome to Talking Point. I guess, it works out for you, never a dull moment, having all of these interesting but not necessarily wanted topics to speak about.
Yeah, good morning, Sean. It's nice to be here. True, it's never a dull moment. The challenge that we continue to face is that it's not only about crime anymore, and the fact about where the fear of crime is still not about. With the new legislation, standard ground legislation, there's a lot of consultation taking place, which is a positive for this government in the context of the ramifications of this law. And you're getting different perspectives from various groups, various persons, from a legal perspective, from the layman perspective. So a lot of persons are putting their 2 cents in it. With every legislation and every law that has been implemented, there will be some pros and cons to it. Whether the pros and cons outweigh each other, sometimes we may have to even test the legislation back in the judicial system and see where the loopholes are. Because, let's put it this way, it's only when the matter has been put into the judicial system and the laws are tested by the persons there, then we may find out where some of the loopholes was existing within the law, whether intentional or otherwise. But I am confident that the standard ground will give some level on both sides, for and against. So I cannot say it's bad if in the layman terms to say that okay it's bad and I just say bad. When you review, you have to actually review it and see what the intention is. And I hope a lot of persons, I hope you understand what the intention is also.
Well, this is the issue with regards to laws, right? There's always the intention, but it goes back to the whole term spirit of the law versus letter of the law. And there will always be people, particularly now. I can't speak to the 1800s or the 1700s. It probably happened then. But as laws got more sophisticated and more people figured out, hey, well, if this is the law, I could exploit it in that way. Especially as populations grew and you had more people willing to go beyond the spirit of the law and they just want to work within the letter of the law. That's where you get things like financial crisis because they push the boundaries of what the regulations would allow, even though at some point they figured out, hey, this is bad, but it's legal, so let's keep going. And with regards to something like this, there's always that, well, there's two fears. One, that the letter of the law will leave some space for people with bad intentions to do whatever it is that they want to do. The second thing is, and this is one of the issues that I have. The standing ground legislation is technically separate in principle to giving out FULs, whatever the policy is, whatever the regulatory framework is of giving out FULs. But politically, they've been tied together, right, with regards to how it was presented by the UNC before they got voted in, and to some extent even now, because Minister of Defense Wayne Stage is basically saying citizens can shoot first and explain themselves after, which, out of context, is not necessarily, it doesn't look like a very responsible thing to say. So while the two are linked, that implies that we're expecting firearms to be the main way to defend yourself. And I don't necessarily know, and this is something I brought up yesterday, are we ready, given that we technically don't have as an expansive gun culture as the States, are we ready as a whole society now for that kind of responsibility? Because it's, you know, you can't just get an FUL, buy a gun, you have it in your safe, and oh, I'm safe. No, then when the time comes, you have to actually use it, which has its own set of challenges. We've spoken about them before. So that's my concern. To what extent do you think that it's reasonable to say, well, those concerns, while maybe valid, are not really good enough to say, ooh, the law needs to be dramatically changed from what it is currently right now?
It's hard to say that those things are not to be considered, because that's a reality of what we are facing right now. It's a fear of crime. The fear of crime this also indirectly and in some context directly addresses the issue of fear of crime, where you have the opportunity now to probably, if opportunity presents itself to you, defend yourself. I'm not saying the stand your ground legislation doesn't come across as saying, listen, stand your ground doesn't mean that it's the best decision, eh? Because in some circumstances, you may not have that opportunity to defend yourself. You may have to just be the victim and be the victim alone because of the circumstance that the situation is. Right? You have no other choice, but you are the victims, and unfortunately, you'll have to go through the entire trauma because of the circumstance. But it does not say if the opportunity presents itself before you become that victim, you are not supposed to stand your ground or present some defense against that. And this is what this legislation is trying to put forward, that you can defend yourself even before you become the victim, or to try to defend yourself before you become the victim. Whether the vigilante context gets into it, if you read some of the areas in the stand your ground, it covers some of the exceptions of what you can and cannot do. So when you are looking at the stand your ground legislation, I would advise many persons, do not just read it from one section and say, oh, good, look what they say here, I could do this. No, read the entire context and how it is presented across the board. There are exceptions to certain things. There are actions that can be taken. For instance, you cannot use stand your ground as a defense if law enforcement is coming into your house and somebody decides, listen to me, I do believe those persons were law enforcement officers, and I decide to shoot at the all law enforcement. No. I know where you're going with that, Sean.
Because that's the thing, like, I understand. You can't say, well, I don't believe in the state, and the state allows me to defend myself, and you're an oppressive police. Like, I get that. You have no ground to stand there. But what if legitimately, let's just say, last week my neighbor was killed by people, and the police said those were fake police?
And I agree with that. But so the stand your ground legislation gives you that opportunity.
But what if it's real police confronting me now?
No, see,
it was fake police last week, but it's real police now. Good. But I am afraid that it's fake police, because that's the thing with the criminals, and I'll appreciate what you're saying because of this. One of my fears was, oh, we'll give people guns, and what will happen? The criminals will ambush the people, take their guns, and use their guns to commit crimes against them. So the capacity to shoot first, to not have to wait, allows you to not be potentially kind of like, oh, well, I have to see what they're going to do. And by the time you see what they're going to do, as you said, you become a victim and it's too late. The flip side is you can go off maybe half-cocked on situations that maybe you shouldn't. Because I think at some point, it's going to be a very legitimate concern, are these police real?
And that is, and we do in fact have information and incidents where, we, even without this new legislation, where there were police officers or allegedly persons purporting to be police officers committing offenses and robberies, right? So yes, it will be in fact something of concern, but at the same time, like I said, you will have to explain what, there would always be an investigation into this, so it's not clear-cut that, hey, listen, an incident takes place, I shoot some, I discharge my weapon, and the person dies, so that is it. I say, based on standing ground legislation, I have a right to defend myself, don't talk, case matter, finish, everything out. No, there will always be an investigation to determine whether or not what was the intention of the standing ground, if the actions taken by the individual in defense of, or the purported defense of themselves, or the alleged defense of themselves, constitutes or fits within the parameters of the standing ground legislation. If not, there are other laws that will be, you'll have to face the other consequences of the other laws. So,
I mean, I didn't realize, because this part was, I actually did not read this beforehand, right? This, Minister Sage said it specifically, right? If by the manner in which they're behaving, you are not sure if they are police or not, what do you think is the common sense thing to do? I'll leave you with a little quote I learned from my good friend Herbert Volney. It is better to be judged by 12 than cried by 6. If you are not sure that the persons outside are law enforcement, then, and you feel that they might be posing as law enforcement, and you feel that if you don't act, you could die, you are entitled to shoot. You see, like, in theory, I agree with that in theory. In reality, it will lead to police officers getting shot at.
Fair enough.
And here's the thing. First of all, there is the police officers might get shot at and killed. That's bad enough. But what do we know that tends to happen to people that shoot at police, who are usually more trained at shooting? They shoot back and kill.
Let's flip it on the opposite side of it. Considering this, I would I know that the police internally, I would be doing it, and I expect my colleagues will be doing it also, reviewing it and see that this is an area that we may have to improve on our policing policies and procedures when we are executing and going to persons' homes. How do we treat with that? Because not having and we always said it, it means now that it might be very prudent in this situation. The use of the body cams have to be put in place now. It should be a mandatory perspective if you're going to execute warrants at persons' houses, specifically when you believe that they may have firearm and ammunition, when you're entering people's house. So you'll always have, or should have, some video evidence to support some of the actions that you are taking. This has to work in tandem with a lot of other things. Changing some of the policies and procedures and how we execute warrants and how you go to persons' homes and the reasons why you go to persons' homes, right?
Well, it's just interesting that you say that, because I find it interesting. Usually, because this essentially what Minister Sage is saying is kind of like trying to compensate for procedural deficiencies or what have you. Police identifying themselves is one of them, and execution of warrants and stuff like that. But also the whole situation of the deficiencies with regards to preventing illegal police uniforms and fake police, those situations happening, right? And usually I would be against something like this, because you're putting the police in a spot that will force them, at least in the things that they can control, improve. And usually that's not necessarily the best position to be in. So I'm kind of of two minds, because I do see your point, but there's a part of me that wants to say as well, we shouldn't necessarily need to have the police be under the threat of being shot at potentially legally, right? I'm not entirely sure what it means for the laws of, because there should be something about assaulting and shooting a police officer, not? So like to have that to be the incentive of, hey, you only to get your ducks in a row, right?
I don't think I know where you're going with it. I hear you, but
like you know, like I'm of two minds, you know, like that of that general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But from my perspective and being in the organization, we put ourselves sometimes in some risky situation that we should not have been, right? And when we take certain actions, it is difficult for us to, because nobody wants to believe, because everybody say, hey, the officers lie and all that, they don't tell any truth and everything happened. So I'm simply saying that considering the consequences of and how it is structured in the standing ground legislation, right? That you have to, if the law enforcement knows that that can be an avenue where persons may use to defend themselves from the allegation that it may be not law enforcement officers, it means that we now have to, the law enforcement now has to step up the game in saying, listen to me, that defense that you're going to use is no longer relevant for the use of the standing ground legislation, because our policies carry out X, Y, and Z, and the persons are clearly defining themselves or either being identified as law enforcement officers.
That's the thing, like when you have a confrontation, particularly, and this is one of the things I spoke about yesterday, civilians are going to be less trained or untrained with regards to conflict scenarios. They might train to shoot the gun on the range, but to say going through role-playing simulations as to when to shoot, when not to shoot, probably not going to have that. And there's a part of me that's very nervous just on the basic premise of this is putting TTPS personnel at risk. It's then putting the public, you know, in response at risk as well. But the initial risk goes with the officers, and I'm not so sure that I like this. Now, I just want to say the situation with the potential vigilante justice that hit the news this morning with the man getting beaten, that is not covered by this, because the commission, I believe, explained it very well. It's like, it's one thing to defend yourself from imminent harm, it's another thing for a mob to basically continue to beat and torture and brutalize somebody. So...
No. I do not like the extent or the additional risk that my colleagues will be facing. But there's a but with it. It means that we need to revisit some of our procedures and ensure that if your procedures are stringent and there is oversight of your procedures, the likelihood of the officers getting involved in this risk, being subjected to this risk may be minimized later down. But with or without this legislation, they are still at the risk of going into locations, getting in gun battles with persons, and we have no way of defending ourselves because everything is blamed on the officers because of the officers' action was not justified. And I'm saying that this may be an opportunity.
Yeah,
we have to look at it from all the sides available.
I think part of the problem, we have a caller that called in. We'll take the call. I just say, I think one of my big problems is actually really just the way how the minister put it across. It seemed very, very blunt, and to some extent the statements, not necessarily the content, but how it was framed, I don't know if that's the most responsible way to put it. And yeah, it just, to me, this now borders, if not actually crosses the line of, well, hey, don't expect the police to protect you, because look, you might need to protect yourselves from people coming to the police. So you protect yourselves. And there's a part of me that wonders how much it undermines the TTPS too much. I understand trust and confidence is a thing, but like at some point, there's a bottom that we should not go under with regards to trust and confidence. Otherwise, the system will be so broken, it don't make sense. It'll never recover if we want to operate at that level where we just have zero trust. We have a call from San Fernando. We'll take the call right now. Caller, good morning. You on here?
Morning.
Morning.
Morning, morning.
Hello, morning, Sean.
Yeah, go ahead, caller.
Yeah. I just want to make a couple of points here to you and the guest morning. One, we have the standing ground law trying to be implemented here. I think we're losing sight of a number of things here because we're creating all these various scenarios. And nobody's talking about victims. Nobody's speaking about victims. That's the first thing. The second thing is, nobody is talking about the wheels of justice that are grinding so slowly that people die with cases in the court and never get justice. That is the second thing. The third thing is, police patrols are non-existent in certain areas, and police response is almost non-existent in certain areas. And that is important in terms of factoring. People wouldn't have use of a gun in their house if police could have responded. In certain states in the United States, police in the patrols are given a certain time to respond to things in the area. 3 minutes, 2 minutes. My father passed away in Miami, suddenly. And the paramedics took 5 minutes to get there, to get him to ER. And still they were too late, and they were chastised for that. They had a 3-minute window to reach him. Now we're in a society where everybody wants a gun, Sean, but not everybody could afford a gun. That's the first point. While you could get a gun illegally on the street, the legal person, the person who is a law-abiding citizen, has to go through a process to get a gun. Psychiatric evaluation, training on the range, questions to answer, all these things. People talking like if this just going to hand out by the corner, and this is not how it's supposed to be. So this whole impression of stand your ground legislation should be the last resort. I listened to Karen yesterday, and she was very correct in terms of comparing Jamaica and the legal system and how they have reduced the caseload. Now, we're not following the thing properly. And we are allowing things to get out of hand. And this is because the law and order that we should be observing is not being observed. From the child in the primary school who just run across the road just so. They don't look left, they don't look right, they don't look left again. This is a simple thing, But you see, we gone to the extreme here, right? Now hear me, in my home, I will protect my home without a gun. And I'm very sorry, I know the gentleman on the other end there might get a little perturbed, but I have my home, I work hard for what I have, whether it be a vehicle, whether I build my home, a children in the home, a grandson, whatever. But if you come into my home and for any reason I feel threatened, without a gun I will defend myself. And without having, we have neighbors in our home, around our home here. And one day a guy jumped my fence and the neighbors responded. We tie up that man on the ground and had to wait for the police and ambulance for over 2 hours to reach here. And I live in the heart of San Fernando. So you tell me the standing ground legislation, while we are here, what is the plight of the victims and all this, home invasions and all these things? When we standing by waiting for justice, the hangman being paid every day for doing nothing. That is the first thing, right? And the jails are overcrowded, and Karen was right. You have minor offenses in remand here. Get rid of them now, man. Come now, man. If you're minor, you smoke a cigarette, you throw the butt on the ground, littering, all kind of thing, people are the bill. Come on, let me ease up the caseload and then classify murder and homicide and all those things. And let me move the judicial system in the right direction. Standing ground should be the last resort for anybody and everybody. A man get vexed with his wife, he pull out the gun and he shoot his wife. And then there's a next issue by itself. So all these scenarios we're creating here and we're talking about, we're really not talking about the real things that we're supposed to be talking about. And we're talking about everything else. What could happen, what should happen, what might happen. And nobody is considering the victims of crime and how can we alleviate and mitigate against what we see currently happening in the society. And here it is not by chance these things happening. Some of these things very well planned. People drive through your neighborhood and quiet time during the day, and they case your house and they watch everything, and they see the times cars parked up in your garage, and they see the times people coming home and all this. These things are happening randomly, you know. People know exactly what they're doing. People know who is pensioners and who is not pensioners. All kind of thing. People not stupid anymore. People, I just read an article in paper. A fella going in FCB or somewhere and he draw money from Ministry of Agriculture, and next thing you know, they break the van and they thief the money right in the Ministry of Agriculture office, and he hide it under the seat. It have to tell you that somebody in the bank know the man draw the money. Yeah. It's not that stupid. People not that foolish anymore. And so we're not connecting the dots and some of the things that are happening. The second thing I just want to say briefly, quickly, that Ramco explosion that took place one day, I live near to that Ramco explosion, right? They call our residents meeting yesterday or day before yesterday. And Mr. Brian Manning jumped in the mix, who is not even the MP for this area. I live here 21 years. I never see an MP walk in this area in my life, right? He jumped in the mix to come and talk to the residents here, together with Ramco official affair. I live next to 2 fire personnel people in my street. 2 fire personnel who retired. Not that we don't know what to do, you know. We're not foolish. But Ramco has to put things in place. There was no warning salary. There was no all clear salary. Fire services didn't come to the area to test the air to see if gas blanketed the area before people put on their stove. There was no communication between the safety people at Ramco and the residents of the area. We don't know what the blast zone is if Ramco really go up in an explosion. Yeah, man, not everybody's stupid in the society, and it have intelligent, well-versed people. And I work in the oil field for 23 years, and I know what safety is about. And when you have a company like that in an area, yes, HEC come after and build around them. Like many areas, Marabella and Gasperola and Claxton Bay, where you have the refinery and fence line communities, but you have a responsibility to the community that you operate in. And if you don't put things in place, then when a disaster happens, as usual, Trinidadians, we're reactive rather than proactive. I was evacuating my family, and people were running towards the fire to see fire, and things were exploding and pitching all over the place. And so that is the kind of mentality, and that is the situation we have in Trinidad. And so until we address some basic grassroots thing, we will never solve all these problems. God bless you for that. Have a great day.
Thank you, caller. I'll just say quick. One of the reasons why I think I took issue with how the minister spoke, and I don't necessarily agree with the criticisms that the chief whip had, but it's just as almost like if we're conceding that things are so bad, we have to give you the responsibility to do it, right? To the point where saying, well, shoot first if you think it's fake cops is almost like, yeah, we can't even trust the cops to manage the story, so you take on the responsibility as a citizen. Better to be judged by 12 than to be carried by 6. I don't know. I do wonder if that and all might be a communication error, because it might actually push members of the public to trust and depend on the police. Yes, I understand there are issues like the response time. We did mention it yesterday. We didn't go deep into it with them. But to say anything from leadership that's going to compound reduce trust and confidence in law enforcement, I don't think it's useful or healthy at this point in time. We have Digger Martin on the line, so we'll take the call. Digger Martin, good morning.
Good morning, Sean, and to the ASP with you all. I'm looking on the screen and I'm seeing vigilante justice. And to me, that is a farcical headline. I want to come back to stand your ground. And stand your ground, from my vantage, is giving the TTPS an opportunity to fight crime. We have to start somewhere. The fact is, TT is not ready for firearm responsibility. When the procurement legislation was established, was Trinidad and Tobago ready for that? No, it's an opportunity to do the gap analysis. I am saying, and I have been consistent, TTPS has been overwhelmed with criminal activities. And in some instances, they have failed to respond. A lot of investigation. We hear it start and don't know if it's a cold case or if they lose the file. So what I'm saying, this is an opportunity to help the TTPS. For example, to acquire a FUL requires resources. Resources 10, 15,000. Not everybody will have that resource to buy a firearm. Let's be honest with ourselves. The people who are targeted outside the activists who say jump the wall and deal with them, the people who are targeted are the people who, I suppose from the criminal vantage, have something, have an opportunity to get jewelry, etc. So that is a 10, 15%, or less than 10, 15%. Sometimes they say it's 1% or 2% of the population. So that will give the TTPS a time to look at the other larger part of the population. Because if these people have it, they don't have to make a phone call and wait for 25. Hopefully they will be trained properly so they can make an informed decision. This is what the consultation is about. This is what they do. Make sure you are trained properly. Now, let me go back to the TTPS because it hurt me today to read on the newspaper a former high-ranking official of the Trans Authority has been charged. Let us go back to 2021, where 5 boys escaped from the control of the Trans Authority. There was a shootout. 2 of them died, and it is alleged that it was imitation police. Where has that investigation gone with the TTPS? That is what I'm saying. The TTPS is overwhelmed. That has serious consequence with all these things they say, the SAPGA report and the Judicis report and the pedophile, you know. The TTPS has to come out now and tell us where that's going, because that is a shame. So I am in support of the standing ground. I don't have the resources to basically buy a firearm. I don't believe I want to have it because I'm responsible. I could read and write. I have a particular educational background, so I will make that decision. Nobody's forcing you. You can't just go just so. You have a protocol to do to get a FUL. So I think it is an opportunity. Let it happen. Do the gap analysis and let's fix it. Just like the procurement. The procurement legislation, the regulator said 5 billion in suspect contracts, sole select contract. That is why we have to start someplace. And I am saying the place to start is with the TTPS and by extension, the judiciary and the TPS. The 2 most critical organizations to fix crime. I'm going to have a nice morning.
Thank you, caller. Well, I do think also things like, well, first of all, prison service need to be fixed even more than the TTPS. I'm just going to say that right now. Things that we're hearing, prison service need to be fixed. There's a lot of major, big, gaping wide holes. You could drive 15, heavy-duty trucks through, side to side through that wide gaping hole. I think that the prison service need to fix. TTPS has holes, but it ain't like them holes, right? Where you basically have, it is believed even by authorities that you have something like 40 officers that they know of, including senior officers involved in the security breaches. Now, I'll just say this. One of the issues I have with the firearms and the need for training, we're going to arm the people, they need to be trained. The consultations is not just it. I don't know, from what I understand, Ashraf, Glock pistols don't have manual safeties because law enforcement officers in other jurisdictions, I don't think they were looking at examples here, would draw their pistols and forget to take their gun off safety and get themselves in a bit of a pickle. The US military, on the other hand, they decided not to go with Glock because they wanted a manual safety because they didn't trust their own soldiers to not shoot themselves without a manual safety. So you have 2 situations where you had deficiencies in how trained individuals would deal with a firearm. One, in a confrontation, they might forget to take the safety off. The other, without the safety, might end up shooting themselves. These are military, paramilitary trained individuals, right? And that's just one aspect of training that I fear will the public get, and that's what kind of makes me nervous. That coincides with what the minister says, because the minister is kind of saying things very directly and very boldly, and then when people kind of take that and run with it, you know, I'll just get a gun and yeah, and I can shoot first and yeah, and then there's always the, well, you shoot at the criminals and you end up getting shot and killed instead, you know? Better to be held up by 3 than carried out by 6, you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? Better to lose all your stuff than carried out by 6. That's the other side of the coin of Minister Sturge's quote. I don't know if he necessarily wants to acknowledge that. Okay, we technically have a couple topics that I'll still want to pass by, Ashraf, but we will open up the phone lines now since callers are coming in, and we are more or less at that time. We do have a call from Arima. Caller, good morning.
Morning, Sean. Morning to you and your guests. Now, my comments directed firstly at you, and then to your guests. Now, the first thing is this: you're talking about the directions that the PNM was carrying the country, right?
Mm-hmm.
To me, PNM just wanted to maintain the status quo, you know.
Yeah, basically, yeah. And it was cowardly to do so.
They provide contracts for the family. They provide contracts for the family members.
Mm-hmm.
And they will develop Trinidad, but financiers and the family must benefit.
Mm-hmm.
So we budgeting for 55 billion, but we're spending 50. But really and truly, we're spending 50 and we're spending 60.
Mm-hmm.
The second one with the unions. Now, if you're really following this thing, trade union leaders prostituting themselves for political gain at the expense of the members.
Sure.
And I say so because in 2010, for the elections, did the unions march with the UNC to form the partnership? In 2015, wasn't Dr. Rowley and the same Ansel Roger marching through Port of Spain? Now 2025, same unions come back now and they're allied with the UNC. So the Calypsos from yesteryear sing true. Stalin have vampire here. Valentino have what? Trinidad is nice, Trinidad is a paradise. And Rashoti, I have money is no problem. I want to sit down and listen to them 3 Calypsos. And you would understand that our country just going on in a circle.
Mm-hmm.
Now, to your guests, good morning, sir.
Morning.
I want to ask you some pertinent questions about your national security minister.
Wait, which one?
He said something on the television.
Defense?
No, hold on.
Defense or Homeland Security?
Homeland Security, sorry. Well, it's the same national security, just a different name. He said the last government failed on crime. All right. But that is only half the truth. Because I want you to tell me, in 2015 on the structure, what was he?
Which structure?
And in 2025, when he retired, what was he?
And what structure are we talking about?
Because I believe in 2015 he would have been either an inspector.
Okay.
Coming on the TV.
All right.
And in 2025, when he retired, he would have been a superintendent or a senior superintendent.
Senior superintendent.
So while he was failing in crime, he was getting promoted.
No, I wouldn't say so.
Yeah.
I wouldn't use that as an analogy, because if I would.
Who was the poster boy for the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service?
Who is that? Who was the poster boy?
So,
call it to be fair.
So, Mr. Alexander, I
No.
understand that.
Hold on.
It was on the tape.
It is unfair. It is unfair to make that statement. No, it is unfair.
You showed us one incident that time in Claxton Bay where you had a police jeep with 2 police officers and 3 bandits.
Right.
And they went to rob this Chinese gentleman.
So you see, you're making.
Yeah, that was the video when Malan asked him.
Caller, you're making statements and
is that a legitimate vehicle?
You're putting questions. No. You're putting questions towards me, and I'm not giving me the opportunity to respond because you're making statements openly.
No, well, I don't want to take up no time.
No, I
just want to ask the question so that other people get a call.
Okay, go right ahead.
All right?
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm saying is, you're telling us on one hand, the last government failed on crime. All right. But on the other hand, you got promoted about 3 or 4 times within the institution that you represented.
Okay.
And as deceased guns, and I would say, yeah, once a police, always a police.
And so my answer that first question first. That thing on the point today.
Right.
The government does not promote police officers. And I take
no.
And hold on, I take offense to that. I will take offense to that because within that period I would have qualified and gotten my promotion also. And the government did not do that. Right? So it is unfair to say that the government did not promote us.
But what I am saying is this, sir. When you make a statement carte blanche that the last government failed on crime.
So then the question
that's supposed to be fighting crime, and you get promoted. How does that look?
Hold on. Yeah, you need to understand something. While I have been one of the big proponents of saying that there have been interference at the top cop and police executive levels from the government, for the most part, you cannot lump the TTPS with the institution that is the cabinet and the majority parliament of Trinidad and Tobago. They are two separate things.
No,
they are two separate things.
Why
in part because caller, and I've said this before, the whole situation is propped up by officers who effectively are being held hostage by both their leaders in Parliament. Hold on, caller, let me finish. There are officers who are keeping things going like they are public servants, whether they're the majority or the minority, we don't know for sure, we don't have statistics. But we do know, like ASP Arun, officers whose health is failing them, there have been, every now and then you see officers die of heart attack, not because they were shot and killed in line of duty, die of some disease or whatever, because they overwork themselves, because they are members.
Excuse me a second.
Hold on. They are members of the institution.
Miss Martin.
She is one.
DCP Martin.
She is still one officer.
Explain to leave Trinidad to go Barbados with no crew officers to lock up nobody.
Right. Yes, but that did not come. Caller. That did not come from the commissioner. That did not come from the TTPS. That was a group of officers. Caller. That had to have come from a politician. So the blame, therefore, in that situation is not with the institution of the police.
It's not a question of blame. Malan, I said Malan. Sean Michael Small, understand what I am saying? If you are telling me that the last government failed on crime, and you in the institution who fighting crime, and you get promoted about 4 to 5 rungs up the ladder,
that has nothing
to do with
No, we are talking to this
caller. All right, look.
You're indicting yourself.
Caller.
Thank you.
Caller. What does... You see, I understand the want to put those things together, but the promotions of police are not under the directives of the government. That's point number 1. Point number 2, if you would have let me finish, I was trying to say that there are officers that are working hard at the job. And Suzette Martin's existence does not negate that. If there weren't officers working hard at their job, then the whole system would have collapsed months, years, decades ago. Then they wouldn't have officers like ASP Arun that has health problems because he never thought about dealing with his health. He was working. He worked overnight. He worked from one full shift overnight into our next full shift. Didn't go home, didn't bathe, didn't change his clothes, didn't get sleep. Now he has issues, and I'm probably revealing too much of his personal situation. But my point is, right, you can be promoted for doing good work in a failing institution. Doesn't mean that the institution itself is in a healthy place, but more importantly, a lot of the issues, what's the difference between Jamaica and Trinidad? It's leadership, and most of that leadership comes from the politicians. And that is a separate thing to the police service. And in fact, let's not forget, he was removed from Beyond the Tape. Why? Because he wasn't falling in line with the hand-picked commissioner by the previous administration and Ella Ewa Christopher and the public messaging, or lack thereof, of what she was trying to put out there. Because he went against the police executive, he was removed from the show. Let's not forget that.
Exactly.
So, we have Tunapuna before San Fernando. Tunapuna, good morning.
Sean and the goodly officer there.
Good morning.
Morning.
I just want to shift a little bit from this important topic you all are discussing to something you touched on this morning a little bit, Sean, the COVID. I want to go back to COVID and get something straight with COVID from CNN and some of our mainstream media in this country, especially coming from your TV station this morning too.
Yeah.
COVID, CNN boasted of the handle COVID well. I want them to answer this question. If they boasted that they handle COVID so well, why did we in the Caribbean, in the West Indies, were number one where COVID deaths were concerned? 4,032 deaths we had before all the restrictions, after all the restrictions were moved. We were number one in the Caribbean for most deaths with COVID. How come can we say we perform well in handling COVID when we were number one? We also were number 20th in the world for most deaths in COVID. So we have to get this, I don't know how to call it, out of the way and stop fooling the people, especially some of our mainstream media. Let us set the record straight. We were number one for COVID deaths in the Caribbean, number 20th in the world for most COVID deaths. Staying with COVID.
For most, did you say most?
As per capita.
Right, okay, just making sure.
Okay, right. Thanks for the reminder of the correction. Yes, going to COVID from a different angle now. From the year 2016 to 2019, before COVID, Trinidad and Tobago had a retrenchment of 102,000 people. Now you could get this proof from NIS. NIS workers were, as a matter of fact, 516,620 something. NIS people were paying NIS. 516,926 people were paying NIS in the year 2016 when the PNM took government. And by the year 2019, before COVID, that 516,000 and 600 something went to 404,000. You can get this information from NIS. This is the best record you can deal with proof of how many people lose their job before COVID. 100 and something thousand people lose their job before COVID in the first 3 years of PNM from 2016 to 2019. Check the records from NIS and you will get it. So this thing about they're doing well and they did well and unemployment was different. No, it was a sham. So we had to correct this thing once and for all. I want to thank you all for giving me the opportunity to explain myself.
Thank you, God.
And hope that the population is fed with the correct thing in respect of COVID. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you, caller. We are not 20th or 24th. We are the per capita, as far as I could see, at least based on one source, top of the Caribbean. We are behind the United Kingdom and the USA with regards to deaths per capita. The main reason, and Brazil and Italy, well, Italy is very understandable. They got hit hard. One of the first countries that got hit very hard. The main reason why I would attribute that is with regards to the border security during COVID, and not with regards to the actual management of COVID. What I blame the management of COVID on is the damage to the economy that was potentially unnecessary with the second lockdown. Like at that point, I don't think the benefits of the second lockdown really outweighed the economic harm, because at that point, COVID was more or less within the population and spreading, and it reached the point where you either had COVID once before or you probably were vaccinated, And if you died at that point, you were going to die anyway. That's one of the harsh realities of COVID. With regards to how the Ministry of Health managed it, particularly for 6 months, I have no issue with it at all. I'll be honest, right? One of the things that we don't know to what extent it affected is how much did NCDs affect the death rates? How much did the death rate get affected by inaccurate reporting, whether it was attributing deaths to COVID that weren't because of COVID, and not attributing deaths to COVID that were because of COVID? We just have no idea, right? But how COVID was managed internally, I actually think was reasonably well done. Because you gotta remember, when it happened, there was nowhere in the world that knew what to do. We were all shooting blind. And generally speaking, the best guesses were done in the initial stages. And it was basically err on the side of caution, which I'm fine with, because we saw what happened in India and Italy and so forth. Except the borders were open. And the borders weren't just open like halfway through. The borders were open from the front. And I've gone on record to say that. That's why I said this morning, there was some, it wasn't totally well done, but there was some, right? There was some leadership, because they went in front of the situation and were proactive with COVID, right? It's just that they weren't necessarily effective because the supporting systems around it. We close the borders, but we don't actually patrol the borders to actually physically keep the maritime borders closed. But that is not a Ministry of Health function. So, we have San Fernando on the line. Good morning, caller. You on the air?
Good morning, Sean. Good morning, Mr. Ali.
Morning.
Hello?
Yeah, morning. Sorry.
Yes, okay. It's a good morning. I thought about you last night, Mr. Ali. So to see you this morning, I say yes, my dreams come true. No, let me say this, that's home invasion self-defense law. That is the official name, or proposed law. I listened to Mr. Saddam Hussein talk about it. It seems as if this is standing your ground with guns, because he said it makes no sense implementing this law without amending the Firearms Act for people to get firearms. So this is stand your ground with guns. Now, as a former officer, Mr. Ali, I thought, and this is just for you to comment on as well. If you look at the Offences Against the Persons Act, and you look at the Summary of Offences Act, there are some sections in both which I thought could be brought in a suite of legislation, including this new law, to strengthen the position from a law perspective. Not just this I don't like to call it stand your ground, but as you comment, this stand your ground legislation, as well as especially the Offences Against the Persons Act. Now, I know if you remember, in the Offences Against the Persons Act, Mr. Ali, there's a section 25, where they talk about having a trap, a man trap, or something, or some sort of engine,
any device
inside your house,
right?
Which you could lawfully have between sunset and sunrise. Now, my thing is, you could only defend your house between sunset and sunrise. So those are the things that when I talk about looking at those two pieces of legislation and beefing up some sections in those two, along with this Self-Defense Act, to make it a little more robust. I have no, as I said to Sean already, I have no problem with this standing ground legislation. No, I have no problem. The problem I have with is making guns easier for people to get, which is going, it seems that is the case.
Yeah.
If I have to go by what Saddam Hussein said in that town meeting. Now let me say this quickly to you, Sean, and with your caller from Arima. Sean, you need to apologize to ASP Arun publicly and privately.
Yeah.
You need to do that.
Yeah.
You can't get so emotional that things are that you know in confidence that you bring out in the public. So I hope you do that. And one more thing, Mr. Ali. Last week when we talked about that same Ramco fire, you seem to give a pass to your colleagues in the fire service.
No, I didn't give them a pass.
And what I want, when I brought it up with you, what I wanted was for you to put on your disaster management hat and look at the entire situation, just like how the caller who lives in Union, who called last week and who called again today, to just to give us an honest overview of what you think, in addition to what the fire service did and what we commented, what you think needs to happen in terms of that situation.
Well,
that is all we want.
No, I hear
you all have a good weekend.
You too.
You all have a good weekend, and I see you all matching on the shirts today. Have a good day.
Oh, I didn't even realize. Wow, look at that. Well, kind of. Oh, we have, okay, sorry, my mistake. We lost a Martin, but he could call back in. With regards to that sunrise sunset thing, I'm assuming it's because the law is old. We got it from England, and that could be from the time when, or maybe even it was implemented with practical purpose when it was implemented here.
Offenses in the day and offenses in the night, housebreaking in the day and night is classified different. It's called burglary, and to have a time for burglary, day and night. So
oh, well, I would have thought part of the distinction was because, you know, the whole working from 9 to 5 or 8 to 4 is a modern thing. Back in the past, it was sunrise to sunset. So how are you gonna...
I know. Well, we have more callers, Sean. We have Martin.
Okay, we have St. James on the line. Good morning, caller. You on here?
Digger Martin first.
I don't know. No, we lost Digger Martin.
We lost Digger Martin.
Yeah.
St. James now.
St. James, are you with us?
Hello?
Morning, caller.
Morning, gentlemen. I'm enjoying the program. And you know, so many people saying how they want guns and things. So many people want guns, but it's so, you know, any citizen could go with a certificate character, and you could apply for a rifle, right? They're calling it a pellet gun, but the air rifle pellet guns are very sophisticated and they're very deadly, although they don't consider a air rifle a firearm because probably there are no fire in it. But they are very deadly, and some of them they're pumping up to 200 bars of pressure, and they're using a heavier pellet. And boy, you know, I was at 20 feet of shatter in one inch plyboard. Right? So people, many years ago, a vagrant, I probably have to get charged because many years ago, a vagrant put his head in the can. It was awful, frightful. And since that, in the 80s, I blend 2 pepper in water and I strain it in a squeezy bottle and have it in my cup holder. Since the 80s, I doing that thing. So I guilty. If you see me in my squeezy bottle and it's pepper water in it, one squirt of that, I tell you, and you in some problems for quite a while, right? People, they have hunter slingshots selling by sports and games. We're carrying slugs just like bullets, and they're deadly, right? So people could put a box inside the house and you have about 15 big stone inside there. You know, you have many, you know, you could join the archery club and you buy a nice archery set and you practice. And so you have so many ways.
and the gun license, the first question they ask, the thing they're asking is you must give the commissioner of police a good reason why you will apply for, why you want a firearm. What reason you going to get the police commissioner? The family, husband, wife, feature, and they're working for 15,000 a month, they have the mortgage and the car. You're not going to get a qualify for a gun license with that. That ain't good enough. So I talking to a lot of the people out there who listening, all you don't get carried away with this thing. Right? And it have a lot of different ways to protect yourself. Use them, and don't abuse them. What I'm saying is, do things in your home to try to protect yourself. If you're in a situation and people could confront you, you could sort of keep them off a bit till the police come or whatever. You will do little things, see, you will act in a secure way in your home. And you observe everything and you do have your doors open just so, like long time. So you have a lot of ways, right? So I want people to think about the reason you give the commissioner of police why you should have a firearm and see if you think to yourself you could pass this. You must have a certain amount of cash money passing through your hand daily. You have to be at risk in order to qualify for a firearm, and the public should know that. You all go up on the internet and go and call up the application form and see, because too much people carried away with this. All 80% all you ain't getting no firearm license, forget it. Yeah. So I just saying, protect yourself, be vigilant, be conscious, and let us work together so TNT can be beautiful again. I'm not concerned about violence, I'm concerned about safety and protection. Have a good day.
Thank you. We have another caller from St. James who take a call, and we have a comment to get to afterwards.
Okay.
Morning, caller, you're on the air.
Yes, good morning, Sean, and the ex-police officer. I have a problem in trying to rationalize the two terms here, reasonable and proportionate. When bandits come into your house, they come in for a reason. They're not being reasonable, right? So when you say that you have to, when it's being reactive to those bandits, they say that you have to be reasonable, use reasonable force or whatever it is. I don't know what is your meaning of reasonable, and my understanding of reasonable may be totally different. I don't know who's correct in those instances.
Both of us are correct. Both of us correct, sir.
What's that?
Caller, both of us will be correct. That is why both of us, both what you said and what somebody else look at reasonable will be. The issue here with reasonability is what a reasonable man will do. And when they look at reasonable man will do, it's a terminology in law, that what a reasonable man will do in these circumstances. It does not say what your action was whatever is reasonable or unreasonable. There is no checklist to say this is the action you have to take. When you take that action, it will be judged whether or not it was a reasonable action in these circumstances. So how you reacted and how I might react, it does not change the fact that I was right and you was wrong. So we cannot look at it and say it is a wrong or right. That is why it's called reasonable. And reasonable force, we have to, there's a big disparity when it comes to reasonable force that somebody has to understand that it is absolutely unreasonable. If someone is in your property with a stone in his hand, it would not be reasonable for the reasonable person to go inside, take out a shotgun and shoot that individual. The injuries that stone can you can incur with a stone is not the same as that of a firearm. And that is the context in which you talk reasonable force. Or proportional force. But it does not say anything, it doesn't say that when you make that decision, it was wrong. So people mustn't believe that, listen, I have a get out of jail free card in it. It means that they will have more considerations for the actions taken by individuals and by victims in defending their homes. They have a wider scope of things to look at before you are judged. This is how this is what they stand your ground. It is given you the legislation has given you a little more scope for persons to defend themselves. And as the previous caller mentioned, it is not about firearms alone. People are equating it with firearms. There are other devices, other weapons in your home that you'll have to defend yourself with that can cause someone to die. You don't have to shoot someone to kill them. Right? You could end up pelting a stone or pelting a bottle because that was the only thing that you had in your possession at that point in time to defend yourself, and the person falls to the ground in your property and die. So this is where the consideration in the legislation will take in, all of these will be considered in the legislation, and the investigation will consider all of this. Right? So it is not a hard and fast rule, and I don't believe people is understanding that it's not a hard and fast. This legislation is not firearms alone, but because of firearm is part of it, because the conversation is about the use of firearm in this legislation, it is also considering the most extreme measures to be taken, which is the use of firearms. And we all know number of persons who do home invasions are actually coming to your home with a firearm. So proportionate force, reasonable force is where we use is a comparative to somebody coming in the house with a firearm, and you have a firearm, then you'll have the opportunity to utilize your firearm and also be tested, that you will be subjected to this particular law to see whether or not your actions was reasonable or unreasonable. That is what it is about.
Okay, I want to get to a comment because this thing. Please remind us that Mr. Alexander was removed from beyond the tape was due to independent Senator Paul Richards stating that he was tipping off abating gang leaders. No, that is incorrect.
That is incorrect.
The independent senator was saying that what the host of Beyond the Tape was saying, or maybe not the host, the police officer on Beyond the Tape, which at the time was Inspector or Superintendent Alexander, was not in line with the messaging of the CTPS. And based on the context of the statements, it's not that the host is giving gangs a blight. I believe the phrase would be more like, the statement would be that the host is trying to say that the police is giving the gangs a blight. Let's not forget, well, Senior Superintendent Alexander, you could argue, if anything, you could complain that he's too aggressive going after criminals, more than he is not aggressively going after criminals, right? He is an operator. That's what he does. So the statement in of itself is not saying he was tipping off criminals. What it seemed to be was basically he wanted to be tough on criminals. The police had their messaging, and he's like, hey, this is not going the way it's going. And the independent senator brought up the fact, how is it he's saying things that's contradicting you? That seemingly is calling the service out. That is not authorized by the service for him to say, because he also was the public source that I referenced. He revealed that there are not enough tablets or devices, and that's why there's deficiencies in traffic offenses. Something that I myself was not going to say on air publicly until he said it. Because I was not about to just reveal that to the public of my own accord. Right? So and ironically, that's one of the things that I appreciated about him. He was not willing to just fall in line with the narrative that the police executive, and that's the one thing that Erla was there for. She was a political appointee in the literal sense of the word. Well, allegedly, right? But the thing is, not only do I think that the context of that whole topic is being taken out of context or incorrectly, but also, at least in one of the reports, the producer Beyond the Tape cannot remember Superintendent Alexander ever saying any words to that effect anyway. And I do believe it may have been just the independent senator basically making an example of, well, you say one thing and he's saying something else. So this is not a statement of fact. And then on top of that, because, what is it called? Let me go on. The independent senator in a joint select committee saying or making an observation that he was tipping off or baiting gang leaders, that means nothing. For that to actually be actionable, you kind of have to prove it. Otherwise, he could then sue you. Or you're saying that I am tipping off gang leaders, and then there would have been an investigation. Right? Because it's not like he was a golden boy they were protecting. They got rid of him to the point where he was so disgruntled, he was like, let me go into politics. That's the timeline of that thing. He went on pre-retirement leave, disappeared for a while, and said, you know what, I'm going to change the system from the top. Whether he's going to be a great Minister of Homeland Security, like I said in this show, you have to wait and see how these things happen. Like, I don't like waiting because people are dying in the interim. Right? I'm impatient on results when it comes to the welfare of the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago or any human. But at the end of the day, I can't judge the man for work that he's in the process of doing. Whether or not it's going to be good or bad, I'll only know at some point later on. And anything, you know, before that will be premature and not useful. So, no, he was not removed because of that. Independent Senator Paul Richards was not saying that. The incendiary part of what Independent Senator Richards says was basically, he is saying things that contradict you, Commissioner Earl Christopher. And it was almost as though she herself didn't even know if she wanted to do anything about it. But once the Independent Senator pointed it out publicly, it was almost like if, for the sake of her image and for her reputation and the stability of her position, right? Because it's not just vanity. If she leaves that just publicly there unchecked, it will undermine her authority and will make her even less effective, right? At least in theory. I don't know how, you know, I don't know what's less effective than zero effective, but it is what it is. So to some extent, any commissioner in that position would, whether rightfully or wrongfully, be forced to act, and so she acted, right? Don't necessarily agree with it, but I understand it of why she acted. Right? And he was removed. And now he's Minister of Homeland Security. It is what it is. We have another comment to take. Trinidad and Tobago have great requirements to even own a FUL, way better than the United States. Yeah, we don't know if that's going to change. That's one of the things that some of the callers are bringing up.
It's not going to change. It's going to get more stringent.
It's going to get more stringent, which is kind of...
It is going to get more stringent, but they are trying to streamline the process to allow some of the bureaucracies to be, to remove some of the red tape on the bureaucracies.
Let me just say this. When Ashraf says stringent, it's not going to be more stringent than what Euler did, which is basically say everybody no. Right?
No, not that stringent. It's
not going to be that stringent. It might not be Oprah levels of you get a gun and you get a gun. But one thing though about that, Ashraf, it is kind of weird, because based on the political messaging, that's not the impression that I think the population was getting. And to some extent, that's not the impression by which the vote, potentially. I'm not going to say that there was a mandate now to make it easy for everybody to get a gun.
Because persons who have made applications years gone and who have currently put in applications in are the ones who are now going to be realizing or are the ones who are realizing the level of stringency that already existed in the system. The issue of the FIAM is not the stringency of the system alone, it's the bureaucracy or the time that persons would have gotten responses, or whether or not you are able to get, or why wasn't I not denied? Why was I denied?
To cut to the chase, like it's a long process that needs a lot of man hours to physically work, and there's only so many man hours to give.
The commissioner, and I applaud the commissioner in that he wants to address those in the interim in two fashions. New applicants, he wants to deal with new applicants within the time frame because there are certain requirements with CFCs with a 6-month period. So he's trying to address that in that 6-month period, as well as the backlog. And it is okay with the, and so he's trying to address the backlog at the same time. 3 years ago, your situation will not be the same this time. It can either it can you can have a situation could have escalated, or it could have been abated, and you don't need it. You really don't need it anymore. So that is all. That is where the reassessment of the application is supposed to be. Previously, what was happening is there was no reassessment. Nobody was asked. Nobody was getting a feedback to find out why was I not allowed. What is the reason? Do I have to do anything else to present to you? Because if it is that I have to give a reasonable explanation to the commissioner, and I gave a reasonable explanation, and you are saying that, listen, it is not sufficient, then could you bring something else to support your decision why I should be giving you a firearm? Give me the opportunity to bring more information and present a better case to you why I need it, because I see the urgency of my firearm is my personal protection, my personal for my family and my right. Let me bring it and bring more information to you. Give me that opportunity. What was happening is that it was not being dealt with in that manner. So I applaud the fact that they want to do a revisit of the processes and how the structure is put in place.
One of the callers brought up, well, you have to give a reason. And I would imagine in the current environment, the reason would be very straightforward. I need to protect myself, something along those lines, right? The current state of crime. I would imagine, I can't say that is for sure, but I imagine that would be allowed. And therefore, as much as the process technically would be more stringent, on that little caveat, it might be a bit more straightforward and simple and easier, right? Because the whole point is to protect yourself. I doubt you would need to, like, well, there's a guy from this hotspot that threatened me and I need a gun. I doubt you need that level of specificity.
It may not be like that, but at the same time, we're not going to use it. Then that's not going to be a rubber stamp statement.
Yeah, because there'll be other things.
Yeah, exactly. So that might be your initial request. They will ask now, could you support certain things? Mm-hmm. I expect it will be this is an individual thing. This is not a group thing. This is not a group getting a firearm. A whole community going to get a firearm. No, it's an individual thing. So you know how to present your case to the investigators and present it to the commissioner why I need it. Will be, and this is where it should be considered on an individual basis, just like how all is. And then at the end of the day, I am hopeful that within the 6 months period, the public or the applicant would get something in writing indicating what was the decision, whether or not at this point, and I'm just using some possibilities, that you must give somebody a reason why I didn't get it, because there is also the appeal board. If I haven't gotten a response, I cannot take the next step to go to the appeal board.
Here's a little bit of a gray area, because to some extent the commissioner has to follow the what's in legislature, right?
Yes.
But the government doesn't have direct control over him. But when the government kind of maybe wants to give people firearms to defend themselves, those who qualify and want to, right? The thing is, as much as you say you have to justify the reason why, policy-wise, this is the gray area. How much capacity does the government have to change the goalposts of what the on that policy? Like what's the limit? Like what is needed in order to say I need a gun? Because one could argue in layman's terms, the general state of crime, everybody has a general I need a gun to defend myself claim. Now, to what extent is that good enough? And if necessary, could the government say, hey, accept this for that specific thing, right? Because we want people to defend themselves. You know, I don't know. I don't know if they have any formal capacity to do so. They might have informal, well, this is what we would like it to be, right? This is one of the weird things about the reporting and chain of command structure between the commissioner and the National Security Council. But we have to wrap. We're running out of time, or we are out of time. We are out of time. So thanks to all the callers, including Arima. It was a contentious statement. You should have just let us finish talking, and then respond to what we're saying, as opposed to interrupting us halfway. And also to the commenter that we disagreed with, I appreciate the comment as well, because it allowed us to examine the topic further. And to all of the other comments and to all of the other callers, thank you, Ashraf, for joining me.
No problem.
Folks, stay safe. Remember your allegiance to the Republic and to each other. If you do want to get a firearm, look into training so that you could use it responsibly. And never forget, it's nice to be nice. Even when you unfortunately reveal information from a colleague that you should not have, and I will apologize to him in person when I see him, that is my bad. Yes, I really should not have done that. But I was happy emancipation. Folks, we'll see you next week. Stay safe. Bye-bye.
WESN.
Here's your WESN News on the Hour. I'm Naomi McNish. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Stuart Young